They say Christmas is for family. That's what I believed, until the year my own family forgot I was still alive. I am 72 years old. My hands shake when I hold a cup of tea, but my memory is sharp enough to hurt. This is the story of what they did to me on Christmas. And what I did not say until now. Chapter 1. The house that stopped feeling like mine. Christmas lights were already blinking outside when I woke up that morning. Red, green, gold. Blinking like a heartbeat that didn't belong to me anymore. I lay in bed for a long time, staring at the ceiling fan, listening to the sound it made. Tick, tick, tick. It used to lull my husband to sleep. My husband, Samuel. Gone 6 winters ago. The house still smells like him sometimes. Old books. Aftershave. Coffee left too long on the stove. But that morning, it smelled like something else. Pine. Cinnamon. New furniture polish. It smelled like someone else's Christmas. I wrapped my shawl tight around my shoulders and slowly sat up. My knees complained. They always do now. I whispered, all right, to my own body like it was a stubborn child. From downstairs, I heard laughter. Not mine. My son's voice. My daughter-in-law's laugh, sharp, fast, like glass clinking. And children. My grandchildren. Running. I smiled before I stood up. I always smile first. Because mothers do that. Even old ones. I took my time coming down the stairs. One hand on the railing, one step at a time. Every step felt heavier this year. At the bottom, I paused. My living room had changed. New couch. Bigger TV. A tall Christmas tree I hadn't decorated. Presents stacked neatly underneath, wrapped in shiny paper. My name wasn't on a single one. No one noticed me standing there. Mom, my son finally said, distracted, eyes still on his phone. Morning. That was it. No hug. No Merry Christmas. No, did you sleep okay? Just morning. I nodded. Morning, dear. My daughter-in-law didn't look up at all. She was adjusting ornaments, her back to me. The kids need the room today, she said. So, maybe you can stay upstairs mostly. It gets noisy. I felt something sink inside my chest. Stay upstairs. In the house I paid for. In the house I raised my son in. In the house where I once sang Christmas songs while baking bread at 5 a.m. Oh, I said softly. Of course. Because old mothers don't argue. They shrink. I went into the kitchen to make myself tea. The kettle I liked was gone, replaced by a fancy one with buttons I didn't understand. I stood there longer than necessary, pretending to read the labels on the jars, just so no one would see my hand shaking. Through the doorway, I heard my daughter-in-law whisper to my son. She'll slow everything down if she's around. She, not mom. Not your mother. Just she. I closed my eyes. When I was younger, Christmas meant waking up before dawn so the kids wouldn't see me wrapping gifts. It meant burning cookies because I forgot them in the oven while sewing last-minute hems. It meant pretending I wasn't tired. Now, it meant pretending I wasn't in the way. By noon, the house was full. Relatives I barely recognized. Phones held up for pictures. I wasn't asked to join. Laughter that floated past me like I was furniture. I sat in the corner chair. The one my husband used to sit in. Someone had moved it farther from the tree. A child bumped into my knee and didn't apologize. His mother didn't notice. I watched them open gifts. Expensive ones. I had given my son money months ago. For the kids, I said. He took it without looking at me. Now I watched my own money turn into joy I wasn't invited into. Then came the moment that broke something in me. Dinner. The table was full. Plates laid out. Candles lit. I stood up slowly, ready to help like I always had. My daughter-in-law turned and said, loud enough for everyone to hear. Mom, you already ate earlier, right? We didn't count you for dinner. There's just enough. Enough. Not for me. My son didn't look at me. Not once. I nodded again. Because that's what old mothers do when their hearts crack quietly. I'll just have some soup later, I said. I went upstairs. Alone. In my room, I sat on the bed and stared at the small gift bag on my dresser. Inside was a pair of socks.
Cheap. Thin. Still had the price tag.
No card. I pressed the socks to my chest and laughed. Then I cried. Not loud. Just enough so no one would hear. That night, as fireworks went off somewhere far away, I whispered to the empty room. Next Christmas, I will not disappear. They say Christmas is for family. That's what I believed, until the year my own family forgot I was still alive. I am 72 years old. My hands shake when I hold a cup of tea, but my memory is sharp enough to hurt. This is the story of what they did to me on Christmas. And what I did not say until now. Chapter 1. The house that stopped feeling like mine. Christmas lights were already blinking outside when I woke up that morning.
Red. Green. Gold.
Blinking like a heartbeat that didn't belong to me anymore. I lay in bed for a long time, staring at the ceiling fan, listening to the sound it made. Tick, tick, tick. It used to lull my husband to sleep. My husband, Samuel. Gone 6 winters ago. The house still smells like him sometimes. Old books. Aftershave. Coffee left too long on the stove. But that morning, it smelled like something else. Pine. Cinnamon. New furniture polish. It smelled like someone else's Christmas. I wrapped my shawl tight around my shoulders and slowly sat up.
My knees complained. They always do now.
I whispered, all right, to my own body like it was a stubborn child. From downstairs, I heard laughter. Not mine. My son's voice. My daughter-in-law's laugh, sharp, fast, like glass clinking.
And children.
My grandchildren. Running. I smiled before I stood up. I always smile first. Because mothers do that. Even old ones. I took my time coming down the stairs. One hand on the railing, one step at a time. Every step felt heavier this year. At the bottom, I paused. My living room had changed. New couch. Bigger TV. A tall Christmas tree I hadn't decorated. Presents stacked neatly underneath, wrapped in shiny paper. My name wasn't on a single one. No one noticed me standing there. Mom, my son finally said, distracted, eyes still on his phone.
Morning.
That was it. No hug. No Merry Christmas. No, did you sleep okay? Just morning. I nodded. Morning, dear. My daughter-in-law didn't look up at all. She was adjusting ornaments, her back to me. The kids need the room today, she said. So maybe you can stay upstairs mostly. It gets noisy. I felt something sink inside my chest. Stay upstairs. In the house I paid for. In the house I raised my son in. In the house where I once sang Christmas songs while baking bread at 5 a.m. Oh, I said softly. Of course. Because old mothers don't argue. They shrink. I went into the kitchen to make myself tea. The kettle I liked was gone, replaced by a fancy one with buttons I didn't understand. I stood there longer than necessary, pretending to read the labels on the jars, just so no one would see my hands shaking. Through the doorway, I heard my daughter-in-law whisper to my son. She'll slow everything down if she's around.
She.
Not Mom. Not your mother.
Just she.
I closed my eyes. When I was younger, Christmas meant waking up before dawn so the kids wouldn't see me wrapping gifts. It meant burning cookies because I forgot them in the oven while sewing last-minute hems. It meant pretending I wasn't tired. Now, it meant pretending I wasn't in the way. By noon, the house was full. Relatives I barely recognized. Phones held up for pictures I wasn't asked to join. Laughter that floated past me like I was furniture. I sat in the corner chair, the one my husband used to sit in. Someone had moved it farther from the tree. A child bumped into my knee and didn't apologize. His mother didn't notice. I watched them open gifts. Expensive ones. I had given my son money months ago. For the kids, I said. He took it without looking at me. Now I watched my own money turn into joy I wasn't invited into. Then came the moment that broke something in me.
Dinner.
The table was full. Plates laid out. Candles lit. I stood up slowly, ready to help like I always had. My daughter-in-law turned and said, loud enough for everyone to hear. Mom, you already ate earlier, right? We didn't count you for dinner. There's just enough. Enough. Not for me. My son didn't look at me. Not once. I nodded again. Because that's what old mothers do when their hearts crack quietly. I'll just have some soup later, I said. I went upstairs. Alone. In my room, I sat on the bed and stared at the small gift bag on my dresser. Inside was a pair of socks.
Cheap. Thin. Still had the price tag.
No card. I pressed the socks to my chest and laughed. Then I cried. Not loud. Just enough so no one would hear. That night, as fireworks went off somewhere far away, I whispered to the empty room. Next Christmas, I will not disappear. My mother never wrapped gifts. She wrapped love. She would hand me an orange on Christmas morning, its skin bright and smelling like sunshine, and say, "Peel it slowly. Good things don't like to be rushed." That orange was my Christmas gift. I would sit by the window, peeling it bit by bit, watching frost cling to the glass. Outside, other houses looked bigger, brighter. But inside ours, the air felt alive. It hummed with something I didn't know the name for back then. Safety. My father would pretend not to notice us until my mother nudged him. Then he would clear his throat, reach into his coat pocket, and pull out a small wooden toy he'd carved at night after work. "I made it crooked on purpose," he'd say. "So, you remember it came from me." I still have one of those toys somewhere. The paint is chipped now. Just like me. When I was 10, I asked my mother why we never had a Christmas tree. She smiled without looking at me and said, "Trees grow outside. What matters grows inside." At the time, I didn't understand. Now I do. As I grew older, Christmas became less magical and more meaningful. I learned to help my mother in the kitchen, standing on a chair, stirring soup that was mostly water and hope. She taught me how to stretch food, how to stretch patience, how to stretch love. Marriage is not fireworks, she told me one Christmas Eve while we folded laundry together. It's a long winter. Choose someone who brings you a coat. I thought of those words when I married Samuel.
Samuel.
Even now, saying his name feels like touching something fragile. Our first Christmas together was awkward and beautiful. We didn't know how to be a family yet. We argued over burnt potatoes and laughed over it minutes later. That Christmas, we had nothing but each other.
And that was enough.
When my son was born, Christmas changed shape. It wasn't about me anymore. It was about staying awake all night to sew a costume for school play. About pretending I wasn't tired. About saving coins in a jar all year so I could buy one decent gift. I remember one Christmas when I skipped eating dinner so my son could have seconds. He never knew. Mothers aren't supposed to be remembered for their hunger. Every Christmas, I told myself the same thing. This is what love looks like. Giving quietly. Standing in the background. Making sure everyone else is warm. I didn't realize I was teaching my family how to live without noticing me. There's a moment every year when Christmas lights look softer. When the world pauses just long enough for memories to sneak in. That moment came for me this year too. Standing alone in my upstairs room, hearing laughter below, I remembered my mother's hands on mine.
Warm. Certain.
Present. And I realized something painful. I had become invisible, but I had once been deeply, fiercely loved. That night, as snow tapped gently against the window, I whispered the same words my mother once said to me. Life gets colder. But this time, I added something new, and I will learn how to survive it. I did not grow up dreaming of myself. I grew up dreaming of being useful. That was how women like me were raised. Not to ask what do I want, but what is needed. And when Samuel came into my life, kind-eyed and quiet-spoken, I thought I had found my answer. He brought me a coat. My mother would have approved. We married in a small church just before winter. The heater barely worked. I wore a dress borrowed from a cousin, hemmed too long. Samuel's hands trembled when he placed the ring on my finger. "Are you sure?" he whispered. I nodded. Love, to me, wasn't certainty. It was commitment despite fear. Our first Christmas as husband and wife came with more silence than music. We didn't own ornaments. We hung paper stars I cut with dull scissors. We drank tea instead of wine. That night, Samuel rested his head on my shoulder and said, "One day, we'll laugh about this." And we did, for a while. Motherhood arrived quietly. No grand announcement, just a missed cycle, a doctor's smile, a fear so deep it felt like falling. When my son was born, I looked at him and felt something crack open inside me. Not pain, purpose. I remember holding him on his first Christmas, his tiny fingers curled around my thumb. I stayed awake all night just watching him breathe. I told myself, this is it. This is why I'm here. And slowly, I disappeared. I stopped buying dresses for myself. Stopped reading books. Stopped resting. Christmas became an operation. A performance. A mission. I woke up before dawn. Cooked until my back screamed. Smiled even when I wanted to sleep. I learned to cut apples into shapes. To hide disappointment behind laughter. To say, I'm fine, even when I wasn't. Samuel noticed. Sit down, he'd say. Let me help. But help felt like failure. So I waved him off. I've got it, I said. I always said that. There was one Christmas I remember clearly. My son was 7. He wanted a red bicycle. We couldn't afford it. I sold my wedding earrings. I told no one. When he saw the bicycle, he screamed with joy and ran to hug his father. Samuel looked at me, confused. I smiled. That night, when everyone slept, I touched my ears and felt the emptiness. I told myself it was fine. Love leaves marks. You just don't see them right away. As the years passed, my son grew taller, louder, more distant. Christmas mornings turned into chaos. Toys everywhere, wrapping paper like snowstorms. I stayed in the kitchen. Always in the kitchen. No one asked me to sit. No one noticed when I did. That's how it happens. Not suddenly. Gradually. Samuel tried to bring me back to myself. One Christmas Eve, he placed a small box in my hands. Open it, he said. Inside was a book. A novel. The kind I used to love. I remember you, he said softly. I cried so hard I scared him. Not because of the book. Because someone still saw me. But life is cruel in its timing. Just when I started to believe I could be more than a role,
Samuel got sick.
And Christmas changed again. That year, the tree stayed in the box. The lights stayed tangled. The house felt hollow. I spent Christmas Eve in a hospital chair, holding Samuel's hand while machines hummed carols of their own. He squeezed my fingers and whispered, "Don't disappear when I'm gone." I promised. I didn't know how hard that promise would be. After he died, the house grew quieter. My son moved back in for a while. A while turned into years. Christmas became something I endured, not celebrated. I kept giving.
He kept taking.
And I kept telling myself this was what mothers do. But even mothers have limits. I just didn't know mine yet. The first Christmas without Samuel arrived quietly. No warning. No preparation. Just a calendar page turning like it didn't know what it was doing to me. The house felt wrong. Too big. Too echo-filled. Every sound reminded me of something missing. I kept expecting to hear his cough in the hallway. His slippers dragging softly across the floor. The way he cleared his throat before speaking, like he was asking permission from the world. But there was nothing. Only silence dressed up as peace. My son insisted we celebrate. "Mom, Dad wouldn't want you to sit alone," he said. I nodded. I always nod. He brought a small tree that year. Artificial. Crooked. Too bright. "It's easier," he said, plugging it in without asking where I wanted it. The lights blinked on and off like nervous eyes. I watched them and felt something twist inside my chest. Samuel used to test every bulb before hanging them. "Christmas deserves patience," he'd say. This tree didn't know patience. On Christmas Eve, I cooked anyway. Habit is stronger than grief. I peeled potatoes with hands that felt heavier than they used to. My wrists ached. My eyes burned. I burned the gravy and didn't care. My son sat at the table, scrolling through his phone. You don't have to make so much, he said. It's just us. Just us. I wondered when us stopped meaning family and started meaning obligation. That night, I slept in Samuel's sweater. It still smelled like him. I pressed my face into it and cried until my body felt empty. I spoke to him like he was in the room. They don't see me anymore, I whispered. Did they ever? The sweater did not answer. Christmas morning came without joy. My son handed me a gift bag. No wrapping. No card. Inside was a blanket. You're always cold, he said. I thanked him. I didn't tell him I wasn't cold. I was lonely. After breakfast, he made a phone call. Yeah, Mom's fine, he said, pacing the room. No, she's handling it. She's strong.
Strong.
That word followed me for years. Strong meant don't ask for help. Strong meant don't complain. Strong meant carry it quietly. That afternoon, he said something that changed everything. Mom, I think it's best if I stay here long term, he said. You know, to help you. Help. I looked around the house I paid for, cleaned, maintained. What kind of help? I asked. He smiled like a child who already made a decision. I'll handle things. Bills. Groceries. You can rest more.
Rest.
It sounded kind. I didn't realize rest would mean being moved out of the center of my own life. Within months, drawers changed. Furniture shifted. My routine stopped mattering. He made decisions without asking. Invited people I didn't know. Used my kitchen like it wasn't mine. When I spoke up, he laughed gently. Mom, relax. It's easier this way. Easier for whom? The next Christmas came faster than I expected. This time, he wasn't alone. He brought her. My future daughter-in-law. She smiled at me politely, like you smile at a stranger in an elevator. Thank you for letting me stay, she said.
Letting.
I wanted to correct her. I didn't. That Christmas, I noticed something. When I spoke, conversations paused. When she spoke, people listened. When I served food, no one looked at me. When she adjusted the tablecloth, everyone praised her. This feels like a real home now, someone said. I stood in the doorway, holding a tray. A real home. I wondered what mine had been all those years. That night, I cried in the bathroom so no one would hear. I stared at my reflection. Older, smaller, quieter. I'm still here, I whispered to the woman in the mirror. She didn't answer. By the third Christmas after Samuel's death, I understood something painful. Grief doesn't just take people. It rearranges relationships. And mine was slowly pushing me out. I didn't fight it. Not yet. Because somewhere inside me, a voice still said, if you love enough, they'll remember. I was wrong. They married in the spring. Not winter. Not Christmas. But somehow, everything that changed because of that marriage showed itself most clearly at Christmas. Weddings are loud. They announce themselves. What followed was quieter, like a slow rearranging of air. After the wedding, she didn't ask if she could change things. She just did. The cups I liked disappeared first. Then my chair at the table. Then my routines. It's just more practical this way, she'd say, smiling. And my son would nod, always nodding. I began to notice how often my name was used with a sigh. Mom, you don't need to do that. Mom, you already told that story. Mom, just sit.
Sit.
I had spent my life standing for everyone else. The Christmas preparations became their project. I watched from the doorway as they planned menus, decorations, guest lists. You don't eat much anyway, my daughter-in-law said once, crossing my name off the list. We'll make something simple for you. For you. Like I was a separate category. A dietary restriction. An inconvenience. One evening in December, I overheard them talking. We should move her to the smaller room, she said. It'll give the kids more space.
Her voice was calm.
Reasonable.
Polite.
Like she was discussing furniture. My son hesitated. It's her room. She touched his arm. She doesn't need all that space anymore. That was the moment. Not when they moved my things. Not when they boxed up my memories. But when I realized needing less had become my crime. They didn't ask me. They told me. It's safer for you. my son said. Closer to the bathroom. Safety is often used to disguise surrender. I packed my things myself. Photos. Letters. Samuel's sweater. I held each item like it was asking me a question I couldn't answer. The smaller rooms smelled different. Less light. Less air. I told myself it was temporary.
I always told myself that.
Christmas that year felt staged. Perfect table. Perfect smiles. Perfect photos. I was asked to take the pictures. Stand there, Mom. Get everyone.
And I did.
Again and again. When the pictures were posted, I wasn't in any of them. Someone commented, "Beautiful family." I stared at the screen and wondered when I stopped counting. I started eating alone. Not because they told me to, because I didn't fit at the table anymore. Their conversations moved too fast. Their jokes landed somewhere I couldn't reach. I became background noise. A presence, not a participant. One night, close to Christmas, I asked a simple question. Would you like me to make my old pudding this year? She didn't even look at me. Oh, we're doing something more modern.
Modern.
As if tradition had wrinkles. I stopped suggesting things after that. Silence became easier than rejection. I learned how to move quietly, how to apologize without speaking, how to exist without being felt. This is what people don't understand about old age. It's not the pain. It's the shrinking. Sometimes my son would catch me staring. Are you okay, Mom? He'd ask, distracted. I smiled. Of course. Because what else could I say? You're losing me while I'm still alive? That Christmas Eve, I sat alone in my smaller room, listening to laughter downstairs. I folded Samuel's sweater carefully and placed it under my pillow. I kept my promise, I whispered. I didn't disappear. But even as I said it, I knew. I was fading. And no one was looking for me anymore. By the time December returned again, I had learned how to disappear without leaving the house. That is a strange skill to learn. To still breathe, still wake up, still move through rooms, and yet not be present. The smaller room had become my world. One window, one narrow bed, one chair where I folded my clothes again and again, just to feel useful. Sometimes I would sit there in the afternoons, listening to the sounds of the house that used to belong to me. Doors opening, laughter rising and falling, music playing without asking if it was too loud. I wasn't invited into those sounds anymore. I lived beside them. A week before Christmas, she knocked on my door. She didn't wait for an answer. We're rearranging things for the holidays, she said, standing in the doorway like a manager doing an inspection. It'll be busy this year. Lots of guests. I nodded. That nod had become automatic. My body offered it before my mind could stop it. She looked around my room. The box of old letters. The framed photo of Samuel and me on our 40th anniversary. The small table where I kept my Bible and reading glasses. We'll need this space, she said carefully. Just for a few days. I didn't understand. For what? I asked. She smiled, the kind of smile people use when they believe they are being reasonable. For the kids. They need more room to play. You understand. Understand. That word again. My son appeared behind her. Mom, he said, avoiding my eyes, you can sleep in the storage room. Just during Christmas. Storage. I looked at him, really looked at him. The boy I once stayed awake for nights with fever. The boy whose shoes I tied on his first school day. The boy who used to crawl into my bed after nightmares. Now he was asking me to sleep among boxes. I don't mind, I heard myself say. That lie came easily. The storage room smelled like dust and forgotten things. Old suitcases. Broken decorations. Things no one wanted anymore. They moved a thin mattress in and said, "It's only temporary." Temporary has a way of settling in. That night, I lay awake listening to the house celebrate without me. I could hear the clinking of glasses, the sound of wrapping paper tearing, children laughing, and beneath it all my own breathing. Slow, careful, quiet. I thought of my mother's words. Life will get colder. I had not realized it could become this cold indoors. Christmas morning arrived with no ceremony for me. No knock. No greeting. I waited until the house sounded busy before I stepped out. In the hallway mirror, I barely recognized myself. My shoulders curved inward now. My eyes looked tired even when I wasn't. I looked like someone who apologizes for existing. At breakfast, there was no seat for me. Not because they said so, because no one made one. Plates were full. Conversations overlapped. Someone had taken my old chair. I stood there for a moment too long. Then I turned back. I ate bread alone in the storage room. The bread was stale. So was the silence. Later that day, relatives arrived. People who once called me Auntie, Ma'am, Mom. Now they nodded politely. Someone asked, "And you are?" My daughter-in-law answered for me. She's my husband's mother. Not my name. Not my history. Just a label. There was a moment in the afternoon that I will never forget. A woman I didn't know leaned toward my daughter-in-law and whispered, not quietly enough, "You're very kind to take care of her."
Take care.
I was sitting right there. My daughter-in-law smiled proudly.
It's not easy, she said.
But family is family. Everyone nodded. I felt something inside me finally give up trying to explain. That evening, as they gathered around the tree, my son called out, "Mom, can you take the picture?" Of course. I always did. I lined them up, adjusted the angle, smiled so they wouldn't feel uncomfortable. I pressed the button. When I handed the phone back, no one looked at me. They were already admiring the photo. I was not in it. That night, I returned to the storage room and sat on the mattress. I didn't cry. Crying requires hope. Instead, I felt something quieter. A decision forming very slowly. Not anger. Not revenge. Awareness. I whispered to the darkness. I see it now. And for the first time in years, I didn't feel confused. I felt awake. After that Christmas, sleep stopped coming easily. Night used to be gentle for me. A time when the house softened, when memories settled instead of shouting. But now, night stretched itself out, wide and empty, like it had questions for me I didn't know how to answer. I would lie on that thin mattress in the storage room, staring at the dark ceiling, listening. The house breathed without me. Someone turning in bed. A door closing softly. The low hum of the refrigerator. Life going on. Without asking if I was still part of it. I started talking at night. Not loudly. Not in sentences meant for other people. Just whispers. Sometimes to God. Sometimes to Samuel. Sometimes to the woman I used to be. Did I do something wrong? I asked the darkness more than once. Did I love too much? Did I give too easily? No answer ever came.
But the asking changed me.
I prayed the way old people do when they are tired of pretending. Not pretty prayers. Not grateful ones. Honest ones. Lord, I whispered one night, fingers knotted together. I am not asking to be important. I am just asking to be seen. I waited. Nothing happened. And somehow, that hurt less than I expected. I began remembering things I hadn't thought about in years. The way my mother would sit at the edge of her bed at night, rubbing her knees. The way she would sigh, not loudly, but deeply, like a well settling. I had never asked her why. I understood now. Some nights, I spoke to Samuel. I told him about the small humiliations. The way my room was taken. The way my name had been replaced by descriptions. She's old. She doesn't need much. She won't mind. I do mind, I whispered into the dark. I just don't know how to say it anymore. I imagined him sitting beside me, listening the way he always had. Quietly. Fully. You told me not to disappear, I said. But I think I did. Slowly. While everyone was busy. Christmas decorations stayed up longer that year. No one seemed in a hurry to take them down. The lights blinked on in the evenings, bright and cheerful, mocking almost. I passed them like a ghost. Sometimes the children ran past me, barely slowing down. Once one of them asked, "Why is she always quiet?" My daughter-in-law laughed. "She's just old-fashioned." Old-fashioned. Like something outdated. Like something no longer needed. I stopped trying to explain myself. Words felt heavy. They sank before reaching anyone. Instead, I listened. And when you listen long enough, you hear truths people don't mean to share. One afternoon, while folding laundry, I heard my daughter-in-law on the phone. Yes, it's hard, she said. She's still here. But honestly, she doesn't do much anymore. Still here. As if my presence was an unfinished task. As if my existence was temporary by mistake. That night I didn't pray. I thought. I thought about all the times I stayed quiet to keep peace. All the times I said yes to avoid being difficult. All the times I shrank so others could feel bigger. And a question formed, slow and steady. When did peace start costing me my dignity? I realized something important then. They were not cruel people. That would have been easier. They were comfortable people. And comfort has no room for inconvenient truths. I was inconvenient. For the first time, I allowed myself to feel anger. Not the loud kind. The tired kind. The kind that doesn't scream, but stands up slowly. I pressed my palm against my chest and felt my heart beating. Still strong. Still steady. I am still here, I said out loud. And this time I meant it. That night, I slept better than I had in months. Not because things were better, but because I stopped waiting for someone else to notice my pain. I noticed it, and that was the beginning. There are moments in life that don't arrive loudly. No thunder, no shouting, no dramatic music. They arrive like a sentence overheard by accident. And once you hear it, you can never return to who you were before. It was a Tuesday afternoon. Not a holiday. Not a fight. Just an ordinary day pretending to be harmless. I was sitting at the small table in my room, mending a tear in one of my old sweaters. My hands weren't as steady as they used to be. The needle slipped more than once. I remember thinking how strange it was that I still fixed things no one noticed. Outside my door, the house sounded busy. Voices floated in and out. Footsteps. Laughter. I didn't mean to listen. But when you live quietly, your ears learn to do the work your voice no longer does. My daughter-in-law's voice came first. We can't keep doing this forever. She wasn't angry. She wasn't cruel. She was practical. That was worse. My son answered her in a tired voice. I know, but what do you want me to do? There was a pause. I stopped sewing. She's not really living anymore, my daughter-in-law said. She just exists. Exists. Not lives. Exists. Like a chair. Like an object left in the wrong place. My heart didn't race. That's what surprised me. It slowed. As if something inside me sat down carefully and said, listen, we can't say it like that. My son said weakly. She's my mother. Yes, and she had her life, she replied. We're raising kids now. We deserve our own space. Our own freedom. Freedom. I thought of the years I spent without it and never named it as loss. They talked about options. An assisted living place. A relative who might take her. A room closer to the back. They talked about me the way people discuss furniture they no longer like but feel guilty throwing away. My name came up only once. She won't resist, my daughter-in-law said. She never does. That sentence landed softly and destroyed something permanently. She never does. Not because she agrees. Not because she understands, but because she has learned silence is safer than truth. I sat there long after the conversation moved on. The house kept breathing. Life kept going. Something in me finally stopped waiting. I thought of every Christmas. Every meal eaten alone. Every photo I took but was never in. Every time I was called strong so no one had to be kind. I realized something important. They were not waiting for me to get better. They were waiting for me to disappear. For the first time, I allowed myself to imagine a future without them. Not angrily. Not bitterly. Just honestly. And the strange thing? I felt lighter. I folded the sweater carefully and placed it in the drawer. Then I sat on the bed and spoke out loud, calmly, clearly. I am done waiting to be chosen. The words didn't shake. Neither did I. That night, I didn't speak to God. I spoke to myself. You are old, I said, but you are not finished. After that day, nothing outside of me changed. And yet, everything inside did. That is how awakenings usually work. Quiet,
Private.
unnoticed by the people who caused them. The next morning, I woke before dawn. Not because I had to, because my body no longer wanted to sleep through itself. I sat on the edge of the bed and noticed small things. The way the floor felt colder than it used to. The way my hands rested in my lap. Older, but still capable. The way my breath came steady, patient. I realized something simple and frightening. I had been preparing my whole life for everyone else's future, and never for my own. I went to the bathroom and looked at myself properly. Not the quick glance I usually gave. Not the apologetic one. A long look. My hair was thinner. My face lined with years of unslept nights and swallowed words. But my eyes were still there.
Tired.
But not empty. I see you, I whispered. No one had said that to me in years. At breakfast, I poured my own tea and sat at the table, without waiting to be told. My daughter-in-law looked surprised. "Oh, you're up early," she said. I nodded. Yes. That was all. I did not explain. I did not justify. The silence felt different now. Not weak. Intentional. I began to notice how often I had been asking permission to exist. May I sit here? May I eat now? May I speak? That day, I stopped asking. Not loudly. Not rebelliously. Just quietly. I went through my belongings that afternoon. Not with sadness. With honesty. I touched each object and asked myself a question I had never asked before. Do I want to carry this into the rest of my life?
Some things I kept.
Samuel's letters. My mother's Bible. A photograph of myself at 22, smiling without knowing how much I would give away. Other things I let go. Not because they didn't matter, but because they belonged to a version of me who thought endurance was the same as love. That evening, my son asked me if I was feeling well. "You seem different," he said. I smiled. "I am," I replied. He didn't ask more. People rarely do when the answers might make them uncomfortable. The days that followed felt slower. Not empty. Intentional. I started taking short walks again. At first, just to the end of the street. Then a little farther. The cold air hurt my lungs, but it reminded me I still had them. I watched people decorate their houses for Christmas.
Couples arguing about lights.
Children pulling their parents toward displays. Old men standing back, pretending not to care. Life in motion. Life that didn't stop just because mine had been paused. One afternoon, while walking, I sat on a bench and rested my hands in my lap. A woman sat beside me. She smiled.
Cold day, she said.
Yes, I replied. We sat in silence. It was the kind that doesn't erase you. When she stood up to leave, she touched my arm lightly. "Merry Christmas," she said. 2 words. Kindly spoken. I held on to them longer than I expected. That night, back in my small room, I wrote something for the first time in years. Not a letter. Not a list. Just words meant for me. I am not a burden. I am not extra. I am not finished. My handwriting was shaky, but the message was clear. I folded the paper and placed it in my Bible. The house continued as it always had. Laughter downstairs. Plans made without me. Decisions discussed as if I were furniture. But now I saw it clearly. And clarity is power, even when it is quiet. I realized I had been waiting for an apology that would never come. Not because they were evil, but because admitting it would require them to see me fully. And seeing me fully would mean seeing what they had done. People avoid mirrors that reflect guilt. I stopped cooking unless I wanted to. I stopped explaining my movements. I stopped apologizing for resting. Each small act felt like reclaiming a piece of ground that had been taken inch by inch. One night, my daughter-in-law asked casually, "You're not upset about anything, are you?" I looked at her. Not unkindly. Not accusingly. Just honestly.
No, I said.
And for the first time it was true. I was no longer upset. I was resolved. I began planning without telling anyone. Not out of secrecy. Out of self-respect. I gathered documents. Organized papers. Found phone numbers. I moved slowly. Deliberately. like someone preparing for a long journey, not a dramatic exit. On Christmas Eve, I stood at the top of the stairs and watched the house glow below. Lights everywhere. Music playing. Voices overlapping. Once, this sight would have made my chest ache. Now it felt distant, like watching a life that had already moved on. And for the first time, I let it. I returned to my room and sat on the bed. I placed Samuel's sweater across my lap. "I'm not angry," I told him softly. "I'm just done disappearing." I felt no tears, only calm. That night, as the house slept, I made a promise to myself. The kind of promise no one applauds. The kind that doesn't announce itself. But the kind that changes everything. This will be my last Christmas waiting to be loved in return. There is a strange peace that comes when you finally stop hoping people will change. It doesn't arrive with relief. It arrives with stillness. That was what filled me in the days after Christmas Eve. Stillness. Christmas morning came again, dressed in the same bright clothes it always wore. Laughter downstairs. Music too loud for such an early hour. The smell of food I had not been asked to help prepare. I did not rush to join them. I sat on my bed and brushed my hair slowly, carefully, the way my mother used to when she wanted to calm herself. Each stroke felt like a goodbye to a version of me. When I finally went downstairs, no one noticed at first. They were busy opening gifts, arranging boxes, calling out names that weren't mine. I stood near the doorway, watching. Once, this would have hurt. Now it felt like observing strangers through glass. One of the children ran past me and stopped. "Why don't you open presents?" he asked. Before I could answer, my daughter-in-law spoke. "She already has everything she needs." Everything. I looked down at my hands. Old. Empty. Honest. "Yes," I said softly. "I do." And I meant something very different than she did. I sat for a while listening. Not to be included. Just to understand. People reveal themselves when they believe the story is already over. I heard plans for the future. A bigger house. A new city. Better schools. Not once did my name appear in those plans. And strangely, that freed me. Because if I was not part of their future, I was free to imagine my own. After breakfast, my son approached me. "Mom," he said, uncomfortable, "we were thinking maybe next year we could find you a place that's easier for you." Easier. Always that word. I looked at him. Really looked.
He was older now. Tired. Busy.
Surrounded by responsibilities he did not know how to balance. I felt no anger. Only clarity. "That won't be necessary," I said. He frowned. "What do you mean?" "I mean," I replied gently, "I've already found it." He stared at me as if I had spoken another language. "What place?" he asked. I smiled. "You'll know when the time comes." I didn't explain. Explanations are gifts. And I was done giving them to people who never open them. The rest of the day passed quietly. I did not cook. I did not clean. I did not take photos. I sat by the window and watched the sky change colors. For the first time in years, I let myself rest without guilt. That night, I returned to my room and packed one small bag. Not everything. Just essentials. Clothes I liked. The Bible. Samuel's sweater. The photograph of me at 22. I touched each item with intention. I was not running. I was choosing. As I packed, memories surfaced. Not the painful ones. The strong ones. The nights I stayed awake with a sick child. The days I worked without recognition. The years I held a family together with nothing but patience. I had survived worse than loneliness. I realized something important then. They had mistaken my kindness for weakness. And I had allowed it. But allowing something once does not mean allowing it forever. I sat on the bed with the bag beside me and spoke aloud. "I forgive you," I said. "Not for them. For me." Forgiveness is not reconciliation. It is release. Later that night, I walked through the house quietly. I touched the walls once. The door frame where I had measured my son's height. The kitchen counter where I had kneaded bread on countless mornings. I did not cry. This house had held my life. Now it was time to hold my memory instead. Back in my room, I lay down and closed my eyes. Not to escape.
To rest.
The decision was made. No announcements. No scenes. No blame. Just dignity. I thought of my mother again. Her hands. Her voice. Her warning. Life does get colder. But I finally understood something she never said out loud. You don't survive the cold by waiting for warmth from others. You survive it by learning how to carry your own. I did not wake up that morning knowing it would be my last Christmas in that house. Not in the dramatic way stories pretend we do. There was no sign. No music cue. No feeling of finality. Just a quiet certainty sitting beside me like an old friend. The house was already awake. I could hear the children running, their feet hitting the floor too hard, too fast. Someone laughed loudly. A chair scraped. The television played a Christmas program no one was actually watching. The house was full. And yet, I had never felt so separate from it. I stayed in bed longer than usual. Not because my body was tired. Because my heart needed a moment to catch up with the truth. This room, this borrowed, temporary space, had held my last months of waiting. My last apologies. My last hopes that things might soften. They hadn't.
And that was all right now.
I dressed carefully. Not in my newest clothes. Not in my oldest either. I chose the blue sweater Samuel once said made me look calm. Like the sea before a storm, he'd said, smiling. I wanted calm. When I stepped into the hallway, no one greeted me. They were busy arranging gifts, setting tables, planning schedules. Life in motion. I moved through it quietly, like someone walking through a memory that no longer belongs to them. In the kitchen, my daughter-in-law was directing everything. Put that there. No, use the big platter. We'll eat at 12 sharp. She saw me and paused.
Oh.
Good morning. Her tone was polite, professional, as if I were a guest who had stayed a little too long. Good morning, I replied. I poured myself tea. No one offered. I did not wait. At the table, seats filled quickly. Children.
Parents.
Relatives. I stood for a moment, watching the last chair disappear under someone else. Then I turned back toward the kitchen. My son noticed. Mom, he started. I stopped. Not sharply. Just enough. I'll eat later, I said gently.
He nodded, relieved.
Relief hurts more than cruelty sometimes. I ate alone again. But this time it felt different. Not lonely. Intentional. I ate slowly, tasting each bite, as if I were saying goodbye to the habit of rushing through my own needs. Later, gifts were opened. Paper tore. Laughter erupted. Children shouted with joy. Someone handed me a small box. Inside was a scarf. No note. No words. I thanked them. Because manners had been my armor my entire life. I watched the children play. I remembered holding my son like that once. His weight. His warmth. His complete dependence. I wondered when dependence had turned into inconvenience. Around noon, I felt it. The moment. Not sadness. Completion. I stood up slowly. My knees protested, but I ignored them. I looked around the room one last time. This living room. This tree. These people. I loved them. That was the truth. But love does not require erasing yourself. I walked back upstairs. No one followed. No one asked where I was going. I closed my door softly and sat on the bed. My small bag was already packed. Waiting.
Just like I had been.
I took one last look around. The walls. The floor. The narrow window. I stayed longer than I should have, I whispered. Not with regret. With acceptance. When I stepped back into the hallway with the bag in my hand, my son noticed. Mom, he said, confused. Where are you going? I looked at him. Not as a mother desperate to be chosen, but as a woman who had finally chosen herself. I'm going, I said. He laughed softly, nervously. Going where? I smiled. Home, I replied. And for the first time in years, that word belonged to me again. My son stood there for a moment, holding the confusion on his face like something fragile. Home, he repeated. This is your home. I looked past him, down the stairs, where voices still floated up, laughter, music, the clatter of dishes. This was my house, I said gently. But it stopped being my home a long time ago.
He didn't know what to say.
People rarely do when the truth arrives without anger. My daughter-in-law appeared behind him, wiping her hands on a towel. "What's going on?" she asked. I didn't answer right away. I took a breath. Not a deep one. Not a dramatic one. Just enough. "I'm leaving," I said. Her eyebrows lifted slightly. "Leaving today?" "Yes." She glanced at my bag, then back at my face. "Where will you go?" There was no concern in her voice. Only logistics. "I've arranged it," I replied. That was all. Silence settled in the hallway. An awkward, uncomfortable silence. The kind people rushed to fill. "Mom, you can't just leave on Christmas," my son said. "What will people think?"
People.
Always people. I smiled sadly. I stopped living for people a long time ago. Someone called from downstairs. "Is everything okay?" "Yes," my daughter-in-law called back quickly. "Everything's fine." Fine. That word again. I turned toward the stairs. My son reached out, then hesitated. "Why didn't you say anything?" he asked. I looked at his hand, suspended in the air between us. "I did," I said softly. "Just not with words." I walked down the stairs slowly. Each step felt like placing a period at the end of a sentence. The living room was full. Faces turned toward me. Some smiled politely. Some looked confused. No one stood. I didn't expect them to. At the door, I paused.
Not for them.
For me. I placed my hand against the wood, remembering how many times I had opened this door for others. Birthdays. Holidays. Returns. This time it was for myself. My son followed me to the door.
"Call me," he said.
"Let me know you're okay." I nodded. "I will." I knew I might not. The cold air hit my face as I stepped outside.
Sharp. Clean.
Honest. The sky was pale, winter light soft and unforgiving. I stood there for a moment, breathing. No one came after me. That was the final answer to a question I had stopped asking. I walked down the path slowly, my bag light in my hand. Behind me, the door closed. Not loudly, not angrily, just closed. With each step, something lifted.
Not joy.
Relief. The kind that comes when you stop begging a locked door to open and finally turn around. At the end of the street, I stopped and looked back once. The house stood there, decorated, warm, alive. It looked beautiful. It just wasn't mine anymore. "I forgive you," I whispered.
And meant it.
The ride was quiet. I watched the city pass by.
Lights. People.
Life. I thought of all the Christmases I had given. All the warmth I had poured out without measuring it. I had not wasted my life. I had simply finished that chapter. When the car stopped, the driver turned. "Here we are," he said kindly. I stepped out and looked at the building in front of me. Simple.
Clean.
Unremarkable. And somehow, peaceful. I held my bag tighter and walked forward. Not as someone abandoned, but as someone arriving. Continue chapter 10. Old, alone, but not broken. Final chapter. Healing, reflection, quiet power. The door closed behind me with a sound so soft it almost didn't exist. But I felt it. Not as rejection, as separation. And separation, I was learning, is not always loss. The room they gave me was small. A bed near the window. A chair by the wall. A lamp with a warm yellow glow. No decorations. No memories yet. Just space. I set my bag down slowly, like I didn't want to disturb the quiet. It was the kind of quiet that doesn't judge you for breathing too loud. I sat on the edge of the bed and let the silence settle. For the first time in years, there was no one above me, below me, or beside me deciding how much of me was acceptable. No one measuring my usefulness. No one sighing when I entered a room. Just me. That night, I slept deeply. Not the heavy sleep of exhaustion. The clean sleep of safety. I dreamed of my mother. She was young again, standing in the kitchen, her hands dusted with flour. You stayed too long, she said gently. I know, I replied. She smiled. But you left. The next morning, sunlight filled the room. Not filtered. Not borrowed.
Mine.
I made my bed slowly, carefully, like a ritual. Every small action felt meaningful again. Days passed. Not exciting ones. Quiet ones. I learned the rhythm of the place. The sound of other lives moving gently alongside mine. Some people talked too much. Some not at all. No one asked me to be smaller. One afternoon, a woman sat beside me during tea. What's your story? She asked. Not what's wrong with you. Not why are you here. Just your story. I thought for a moment. I love my family, I said. And I forgot to love myself. She nodded. That happens. No pity. No shock. Just understanding. At night, I still spoke to Samuel. But differently now. I did it. I told him once. I chose myself. I imagined him smiling that quiet smile. I knew you would, he'd say. Christmas lights were put up in the common room. Simple ones.
Soft.
Someone asked if I wanted to help decorate. I said yes. Not because I had to.
Because I wanted to.
On Christmas Eve, I sat by the window with a cup of tea. Snow fell gently. I thought of my son. Not with anger. With acceptance. People do the best they can with the love they understand. He had learned a different language than I had. That was not my failure. I did not call him. And that was okay. Healing does not always require reunion. Sometimes it requires distance. That night I wrote one last thing in my notebook. Not for him. Not for them. For anyone who might hear my story someday. Growing old does not mean becoming invisible. Being quiet does not mean being empty. And leaving does not mean you were unloved. Sometimes it means you finally loved yourself enough to stop begging. On Christmas morning, I woke up smiling. Not because everything was perfect, because I was whole. I sat with others. I laughed softly. I listened. And when someone asked me what I wished for, I answered honestly.
Peace.
I am old.
Yes.
I carry years in my bones and memories in my breath. But I am not broken. I survived love. I survived loss. I survived being forgotten. And I remembered myself. If you are listening to this and you feel unseen, if you are shrinking to keep others comfortable, if you are waiting for someone to finally choose you, please hear me. Choose yourself. Even late. Even quietly. Even alone. Because dignity has no age. And neither does hope.